Hi there, my lovely friends. In today's English video lesson, we're going to learn more vocabulary with Professor Noam Chomsky and Piers Morgan. I've already created a couple of video lessons with this eminent professor, and I hope you enjoy this one too.
Well, Noam Chomsky, or the father of modern linguistics, as many call him, is in my view one of the great minds of our generation. He's a linguist, a philosopher, a fiercely outspoken political activist.
The first phrase that we're learning together is a fiercely outspoken political activist. Fierce means strong and assertive. When someone takes action against certain wrongs, they believe that they need to do something in the political landscape. They could be described using the phrase fiercely outspoken. They're not quiet. Fierce is the adjective and fiercely is the adverb. So that's why we need to use the adverb before the adjective. A fiercely outspoken political activist.
Authored over 150 books looking at the crumbling fabric of society. And I'm delighted to say that
he has authored many books talking about the crumbling fabric of society. If you believe that society is falling apart, there is no more cohesion, or cohesion is being eroded, then you could describe this situation using the phrase the crumbling fabric of society. Crumbling fabric of society.
Noam Chomsky joins me now from his home in Massachusetts. Mr. Chomsky, what a pleasure to have you on the program.
Pleased to be with you.
I wanted to start by asking you, there's a famous Doomsday Clock based on what a lot of experts perceive to be the moment the world basically ends.
So there is a Doomsday Clock. A lot of experts perceive that this clock is ticking. Perceive is to sense. Perhaps not to literally see something, but to sense or to observe the situation and draw conclusions about an awful thing that will occur in the future. So this Doomsday Clock is ticking.
That clock is now heading towards the dreaded midnight at a fast rate. We're nearer to doomsday, according to experts, than we've ever been.
Dreaded midnight. Midnight, that is feared, that people are scared of, dreaded. And sometimes when we pronounce this word a bit more quickly, it may sound like like dreaded.
Do you think, I mean, you're 94 years old, you've had an extraordinary life, you've seen lots of things, not least world wars. What do you think about the state of the world right now? And are we right to be perhaps concerned that doomsday is on its way?
Well, the Doomsday Clock was set in 1947, shortly after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At that point, it was 7 minutes to midnight. A couple of years later, in 1952, moved to 2 minutes to midnight when the United States and Russia exploded thermonuclear weapons, showing that human intelligence had advanced, if that's the right word, to the point where it could destroy everything. Oscillated since. In the Trump years, it moved back to.
So the word oscillate is our next word of the day. It's a verb. It means to go back and forth, just like a pendulum. Oscillate. It's a verb, and its noun form is oscillations. Think of it as a pendulum. It oscillated.
2 minutes. Later, the analysts abandoned minutes altogether, moved to seconds. It's now set at 90 seconds to midnight, for good reasons. Set in January, I presume it'll move still forward towards midnight. We're now facing questions that have never arisen in human history.
We're now facing questions that have never arisen in human history. Now, the verb arise is an intransitive verb, meaning that we must not use it with an object. We always say a problem arises, a question arises. So don't use it with an object or in the passive structure. We're now facing these questions that we've never dealt with in the past. Let's also talk about the different tenses of the verb. Arise, arose, arisen. The pronunciation of the participle is different. Arisen.
They will have to be answered soon, or else we're essentially finished. One, of course, is the threat of nuclear war, which is growing both in Europe and in Asia. The other is the inexorable march towards climate destruction.
Inexorable. Inexorable is an advanced adjective. A process that is inexorable cannot be stopped, unfortunately. Inexorable. Inexorable. Let's go back and hear this word again. The inexorable march.
Growing both in Europe and in Asia. The other is the inexorable march towards climate destruction. We have a couple of decades in which to deal with it. Methods are pretty well known. If we don't pursue them, we will pass irreversible tipping points, and there'll be a steady decline to undescribable catastrophe. That's where we stand now.
Irreversible is another adjective. A process that is irreversible. So pay attention to the prefix. It's IR, irreversible. It cannot be reversed. We can't go back from it. And it might reach a tipping point. This is a juncture, a situation where things change completely, that there is no way for us to revert to a previous state, to go back to a previous state. So these are the two major concerns.
I mean, I would add a third to that, potentially, purely based on what Professor Stephen Hawking told me in what turned out to be his last television interview, which when I asked him what was the biggest threat to mankind, he said when artificial intelligence learns to self-design, then that's it. There are some experts out there in the world of AI who believe we may be approaching that eventuality. What's your view of AI and that threat?
We're familiar with the word eventual, which is an adjective, but eventuality is that conclusion. It's the noun form. Eventuality is that final conclusion. Eventuality is something that will occur like an event, which can be thought of as the final point.
I think that's mostly science fiction. I mean, in principle, it is possible to reach what's called singularity, to reach a point where AI might move on independently. But this is such a remote contingency that I really don't see any.
A remote contingency. Contingency refers to an unpredictable set of circumstances. It's a wonderful word, contingency, but he believes this is a remote contingency that is highly unlikely for this prediction to come true. So it's interesting to perceive the situation through Noam Chomsky's viewpoint. He does not believe that artificial intelligence poses a serious threat to mankind. And on that note, I will end today's lesson. My hope is that you have learned at least one word with this video. Let me know in the comment section.